Welcome to today's talk on post-separation abuse. My name is Regina DeMeo, and I'm a family law attorney in Maryland and DC. And with me today is Tina Swithin from California, and she's been a coach for over 8 years, an author of an amazing book, Divorcing a Narcissist. She has a YouTube channel, and I'm just so excited to have you here. Thanks so much for being here, Tina.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here also.
So, if we could first maybe start with your story, which I think is incredible. I know that your story is what led to One Mom's Battle.
Yes, yes. Back in 2009, I found myself in the family court system, and due to severe financial abuse, I went from living, I call it my fake fancy life, a gated community. It was all a facade that my ex-husband, who's a narcissist, that was his image, that was his ego. And so I went from this larger than life living situation to my local women's shelter. And I had less than $200 to my name. So I was forced to act as my own attorney because he could afford attorneys, but he had completely cut me off. And so I embarked in the family court system in August of 2009. I am someone who avoids conflict at all costs. I always say, if you are mad at me, I will stay up tonight thinking about it and obsessing on it because I just don't do well with conflict. And so to be thrust into this family court arena and this high conflict situation was so it shook me at a core level. And so I started going to court when it wasn't my court date, trying to learn the system, trying to understand what I was up against, because I looked like a deer in headlights, standing in that courtroom for the first year. And there was so much trauma going on, and having to work full time, having a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old, and then having to represent myself. It was a very eye-opening experience, the court system in general, because what I quickly found is that they prioritized my ex-husband's rights over my children's safety. And that was a really hard pill to swallow. And so my journey, I was about 2 years into the court system, and was just, this person was wreaking havoc on every area of my life. And it's like being assigned your own personal terrorist is what I discovered when, living with and being married to a narcissist is one thing, but going through a divorce or a conflict with them is a whole nother world. And it was about 2 years into my battle, and I looked at my friend and I said, I think I'm going to start a blog. And it was just born out of my frustration of what was going on in the system, and that I truly can't believe this is happening to people, that children are, you're put into this system and you're treated like a cattle call. And, you have 5 minutes where a judge is determining the well-being of your child and their schedule. And it's like, it would take me longer to go adopt a puppy at the local animal shelter than it's taking for these judges to make decisions on my children's lives. So I started a blog. I titled it One Mom's Battle. And it was really a way for me to just purge what was going on, because it was crazy making. And at the time, I really only anticipated that my close friends and family would follow the blog. It was a way that I didn't have to repeat the events of the day, or the events of court over and over. It's like, here's the link, go on and read it. And you can
Right.
follow along my journey. And it was shortly after that, probably about 6 months after, where Christy Brinkley was also going through a high conflict divorce. I didn't know who she was. She ended up on the Today Show, and I just happened to have the TV on that day. I never watch TV. happened to have the TV on, and she was being interviewed by Matt Lauer.
Oh,
And
wow.
he was just, he had her in tears, and she was there to talk about her Broadway musical, Chicago. And he kept saying, why can't you two put the kids, first? Why can't you put your differences aside? And I just remember freezing and watching this lady, and her saying, Google the term divorcing a narcissist. And I just was, I couldn't even believe what I was hearing. And that day, my blog went from 30 views a month, and 25 of them were probably me, to almost 40,000 overnight. And I realized I was not just one mom, going through this, that there were thousands of people all over the world who were, it's a very isolating journey. And, you try to explain to someone who hasn't been through a high conflict divorce or the family court system, and they look at you sideways. It's
Right.
really hard to comprehend. And so I found my village of people that day and ended up connecting with Christy. She invited me down to Los Angeles. And one of the things she said to me was, you need to write a book, because the blog is great, but people need something tangible and something to hold on to and read and whatnot. And so it got my wheels turning, and I wrote my first book. Which kind of then put me even more in the spotlight, and started just continuing to connect with people. It was like this grassroots movement that spread to the far corners of the world. And so it's been an amazing journey. My family court battle spanned from 2009 to 2019. We actually just terminated his parental rights last year. So, which is almost unheard of.
Right.
And, I had people tell me early on, in family court, you're never going to get him on supervised visits, or you're never going to achieve X, Y, and Z. And I just refused to believe that. I refused to, I wouldn't take no for an answer, because these are my babies and they're dependent on me to protect them. And it was challenging. It is a broken system. I was up against his attorneys, and I represented myself until the last chapter of it. And I was able to hire an attorney to help terminate rights, but we have peace. And so now I use my story and my experience to help other people. When you're in this position, you're guided by emotions. Nature intended for you to protect your young, and your hands are very tied. And so, I try to instill in people, you need strategy. You cannot be guided by emotions, because this system will chew you up and spit you out.
Well, you're right. I mean, just in Montgomery County, we have 14,000 cases a year, right, for family law. And the goal is to finish them up within a year. So how are you going to turn 14,000 cases through the system? We're playing a numbers game. And the numbers are that only about 15% of cases are these high conflict cases. So, right, so the system works for the majority. But
Right.
cases like yours do require really special attention. And I think, to your point, I mean, we could talk about this for hours, but it's the long game strategy. Like you didn't win your first battle and it was game over. Like this was stretched out over a long
Right.
period of time, and you had to document all the evidence.
Yes. Yeah. And I was in court just 2012 alone. I was in court 13 times. It truly was a full-time job for me. And the documentation, that's a great point. I credit that with my children being safe today. And there were times where it just feels so tedious. Why am I doing this? No one's listening, no one's caring, no one's paying attention. All this documentation that I'm doing. And what I share is that, 98% of it has never seen the light of day. It's never been seen by a family court professional, but it was that 2% that was seen that did protect my kids. And I would do it all again to be where I am today.
Well, to your point about the 98% that wasn't, brought to light, a lot of it from what I've seen, right, with my clients, it's not an overt threat, right? So it's a lot of it flies under the radar. And so your 2% would have to be like the best of like
Right.
100 emails that you've gotten in a 1 month period.
Right, right. And when you're in that and you are being bombarded and hit by all sides, it's hard to get into that strategy mindset and look at it going, what is going to matter to the court? All of it feels like a big deal when
Right.
you're in it, but it's lifting your vision and saying, is this going to matter in a year? And you're up against the threshold of, in the court system, what's acceptable to them and what they see on a regular basis, and become desensitized to, their threshold of what's acceptable as a parent is very different than mine. And so it's kind of looking at it through their lens as well, and making sure that you're managing your expectations appropriately.
So one of the things I want to focus on is, especially with expectations, right? Because we in the court system expect that things will calm down after the separation, right? Most of us think, oh, once you're in separate homes or once the divorce is final, you will all calm down and, go on your merry ways. But there's a sliver of cases that actually escalate after the separation. And so if you could just describe briefly the post-separation abuse that you have seen.
Yes, it's these and that's a great point that you brought up, because usually when two people go on their way and they start their new chapters, and they each have their own homes and new careers or whatever it is, that's where things start cleaning up, and you can put the past behind you. But when you're up against a narcissist, you moving forward and excelling in any area of life, whether it's buying a new home or getting a new job or going back to school, they don't want to see you succeed. And so that becomes, you become their focus, how to destroy you in a variety of ways. And it's so baffling to anyone who has not lived this. But, when post separation abuse, it can be financial, it can be, they, a lot of times they fight for the kids and fight for 50-50 custody just to hurt you, because they know, they've probably never changed a diaper, couldn't even tell you who their child's dentist is, but all of a sudden they want to step up and be a parent. Well, that's not their intentions are not honorable. It's just because they know your biggest button is the kids. And so, and that becomes an area of focus, is how much can I take the kids from her or him, if that's, it does go both ways. We see
Yeah.
narcissists mainly in the male population, but there are female narcissists as well. Trying to weaponize the kids, trying to turn them against you. I remember my ex-husband, he knew I'm a health food fanatic. And so he would take the kids to McDonald's and make sure they came home with the little toys. And it was just, he was also a health food fanatic, but it was just a way to, it was those subtle little things to push my buttons, where my kids now have a collection of McDonald's toys and they've never been to McDonald's in their lives.
Right.
So, um, the legal abuse, it becomes an uneven playing field, because the narcissist thrives in that environment. They love the court because it's a stage, all eyes are on them. And then us, on the other hand, who are conflict avoidant by nature, we crumble in those situations. And so we present as, you know, anxiety ridden, or overly paranoid. You have a reason to be paranoid. You're probably being stalked and harassed by this person behind the scenes. And they're really good at going right up to the line and not putting the toe
Right.
over, just operating right within the line. And I remember calling the police early on and them saying, well, has he threatened your life? And I thought, well, he's not stupid enough to do that. It's those subtle, how do you sleep at night? Those type of little comments that kept me on edge all the time, or dropping stuff off on my porch. I remember he dropped off my wedding video one day on my front porch. Those types of things that just let you know he's there and he's not going away, but you end up sounding like a crazy person when you call the police and say, my ex-husband just dropped off our wedding video. They're like, okay, well, that was nice of him. And you're like,
Right.
no, there's more to it. And so there's so many different areas of post-separation abuse. But what I say to people is, the abuse I suffered during my marriage was nothing compared to what I experienced once the relationship ended.
No, it's a great point. I love the wheel that you have explaining the different types of post separation abuse, including isolation. Because I mean, I really had not experienced that before, but I can see how trying to alienate you from family and friends would be a fantastic way to, make you want to need them again.
Right. The smear campaigns, the isolation, that isolation spoke on the post-separation abuse wheel is one that almost everybody experiences. And it can be subtle from, trying to plant seeds with your son's second grade teacher that you're a little unstable, or, my ex-husband went around town telling people I had had 4 affairs. I've never had an affair in my life. It was just so baffling to me. But we live in a small town. We were very well known in the business community. And so I was mortified. There was a point where I said, I'm just going to order a bunch of Girl Scout cookies and wine and never leave my house again. And that was his goal, was
Right.
for me to, and that falls right into the isolation category. His goal was for me to hunker down with wine and Girl Scout cookies. So,
Well, I'm
yeah.
glad you didn't. I think we're all glad you didn't.
Thank
So,
you.
if people want to tap into those resources you have for them, aside from the website, you have a series of books on Amazon, right?
Yes. Yes.
And it's
Um, I
Divorcing a
have,
Narcissist.
yeah, I have 4 books on Amazon for adults, Divorcing a Narcissist. It's a whole series. And then I have a children's book called Lemonade Life. I have this very lemons to lemonade theme. And so it's teaching kids to utilize the lemons that life gives you and make the best of them. And then so One Mom's Battle is my main platform and website. We have lots of resources available to people there, and lots of communities for support under that One Mom's Battle umbrella. And then I recently kicked off it's called the High Conflict Divorce Coach Certification Program, where I am training people to do what I do as a family court advocate, as a divorce coach. And so we
Oh,
have a bunch of amazing guest lecturers who are coming together and will be teaching every single topic under the sun as it relates to divorcing a narcissist or a toxic person.
is one of them Elizabeth Cohen, Dr. Elizabeth Cohen?
Yeah, Dr. Cohen
Yeah.
is, yes, and she talks about after, dating
Yes.
after this type of experience, how do you do that?
Well, she's my guest for next week, so I'm very excited to talk to her.
I love her. She is such a bright light in this world.
Well, you all are. You've been amazing, and I just can't thank you enough for taking time to do this today.
Thank you very much.
All right. Take care, and thank you for
Take care.
tuning in.